Hi guys, it's Sandy with Sandy Cogdell Designs, and today I have the most adorable summer themed shaker card. I have had a lot of fun playing with the new Trinity release, especially the A2 window box card die set, along with the Gashapon Machine Die Set. I was working on another card, and as I was working on it, I thought, man, this would make the most adorable little storefront or drink cart. So I thought, well, let's give it a try. So for this card, I am using my favorite all-time Trinity stamp, Summer Gnome Fun, along with the Frosty Cafe. And I have created a fun little beach scene. Go ahead and hit subscribe if you'd like to be notified of future videos. You can also follow me on Instagram at Sandy Cogdell or on my blog, Sandy Cogdell Designs. Okay, let's get started. I'm going to start off by building my well. So I've got cardstock that has been cut to 5.5 by 8.5. I am using the A2 window box card die set, and I'm going to butt that edge up on that die that would actually put just like an embossed line in there, but I don't need that panel. So I'm going to butt that edge up to that fold line, tape it down, and then run it through my die cut machine. Now that I've cut one from that piece of paper, I'm going to use the remainder of that paper to cut another one. I am using 100-pound paper for this. I've cut a total of 8. It depends on how deep you want your well as to how many of those windows and what weight of paper you're using. I'm gluing all 8 of those together, making sure to line up the inside windows. I'm more concerned with that lining up than the outside edges because they're going to be covered with cardstock. I have a piece of tan wood grain cardstock, and I've got that cut to 5.5 by 4.25. I'm going to put that in my score buddy, and then I'm going to score lines at 1/4 inch increments. The reason I'm doing this is I want a little bit more texture on the little drink shack that I'm creating. I don't know if at the end of the card you really notice all of that detail, but it's better to have it than not. I love the way this paper looks now. I'm thinking that you could use this for a number of different projects. I'm going to have to try to remember that. To add even a little bit more dimension to my paper, I'm going to use some Vintage Photo Distress Oxide ink and my Sidekick blending brush, and I'm just going to dust up that paper, not worried about anything uniform, just kind of putting on some color. Once I get done doing that, I'm going to take that same piece of paper to the A2 window box card die and cut it out just like I did the other ones. And I'm going to go back into my Vintage Photo Distress Oxide ink, and I'm going to hit those window openings and all the edges just to add a tiny bit more dimension. I'm going to use the Gashapon Machine Die Set now, and I'm going to cut out the little awning for the top of the little drink stand, a couple more pieces of that scalloped edge that's going to highlight the awning, and then I'm also going to cut out a piece of hot pink cardstock that I'm going to use for the countertop of my little drink stand. I have the Frosty Cafe stamp set loaded up in my MISTI, and I just want the very top of that stamp where it says Frosty Cafe. So I'm going to take some temporary tape and I'm going to mask off everything underneath that, or not everything, but an inch or so down. And I'm going to mask that off so that I can just ink that first part up and have just that stamped on my cardstock. Okay, so it didn't stamp perfect. That's not a problem, especially because we're just dealing with the straight line here. I've taken a permanent marker and my thin metal ruler, and I'm just going to beef up that bottom line a little bit. I'm going to cut out my little Frosty Cafe sign trim it up in some electric blue cardstock, and then I'm going to apply it to the top of my little awning that's going to go at the top of my drink stand. For the background, I've got a piece of 6x6 cardstock. I am going to put that on my little craft mat, and I'm just going to ink in some Tumbled glass Distress Oxide ink. I'm using my blending buddy, which I love because it's easy on the wrist and hand, and I'm just going to kind of dust in color here. I just want kind of a variegated little mottled background. I don't want anything real solid. I just want it nice and muted. Now I'm going to use my cloud stencil and some Salty Ocean Distress Oxide ink, and I'm just going to lay in some clouds. I'm just going to move that stencil around just to give, different patterns and shapes. I'm not going to take it too far down my card because I do want kind of a horizon left on it. And for just a little bit more dimension, I am going to water down some of that Salty Ocean ink, and I'm going to take my fan brush and I'm just going to splatter some nice little speckles in that sky. I'm going to create a sandy beach. So I've taken a piece of brown cardstock and I've ripped that top edge. It's about an inch wide, and I'm going to just take some vintage photo oxide ink. I'm going to ink up those edges, and then I'm going to splatter it with some of the watered down Distress Oxide ink just to give it a little bit of texture. Now that I have my sky done and my sand made, I'm going to go ahead and trim that down to 5¼ by 4 inches, because I do plan on putting a cardstock border around the outside edge. I do that on most of my cards. Now I'm going to trim down a piece of hot pink cardstock to 5½ by 4¼ and put my sand and sky piece on top of that. I'm going back to my Frosty Cafe stamp set, and I'm going to stamp out that little menu that's on the snowman's little hot chocolate stand. And I'm going to use that to kind of fill in the backdrop of my shaker. I'm going to use my drink stand to help me figure out exactly where I want that little menu to go. So I'll just kind of play around with that, figure out where I want it, and then trim down the edges so that it fits nicely. Now, to help that stand out a little bit more and make it obvious that it's a sign, I'm going to use my Copic markers, and I'm just going to do like a little frame at the bottom. At the top, I'm going to also use my metal ruler just to kind of make sure that I get that frame in the right spot and I'm not coloring over those letters. And to finish off this sign, I'm just going to use some Copic markers and just kind of color in the actual letters that spell out today's special, and then just do a nice light orange color to fill in that white area. It just felt a little bit too harsh if I left it just that color. And I'm going to use the same colors and do the exact same thing to the sign at the top of my little drink stand. I want to get that drink special signs lined up exactly where I want it on the card because it's going to be glued to the background. So I'm going to take my stand that I've created. I'm going to take one of my little magnets because I do have a magnetic glass surface, and I'm going to hold that stand down, figure out exactly where I need that piece to go, put some glue on the back of it, and then just slide it in the back of my stand. Once I got my little well pieces glued to my card, I realized that the front piece, the piece that I had the wood texture on, wasn't covering all of those little white edges. So to fix that, I just went ahead and used a brown Copic marker and just colored around the outside edges of that piece and around the window. In retrospect, I could have cut all of those pieces out of a brown cardstock, but But that gets kind of pricey. I prefer to use my white cardstock for this type of thing and save my colored cardstock and pattern paper for things that are going to actually show. I have a piece of clear acetate cut to go over that window opening. I'm going to use some liquid glue just to go around the outside edges of that window, trying to keep to the outside edge, just so that I don't have any of that glue squish onto the acetate, because it will show, and it's pretty much impossible to get rid of if it does. And things are starting to look really good on this card. Now we are going to start decorating the inside and the outside of that drink stand. I want to use the drinks from the Frosty Cafe stamp set, so I'm going to go ahead and stamp out that whole stamp on a piece of white cardstock, and then use the coordinating die to cut it all out. And then I will trim what I want from that. I'm going to cut out the drinks that he's holding on the tray and the little desserts down by his belly. Once I looked at my drink stand, I felt like the bottom was kind of bare. So I took the fish from the Nomies Under the Sea stamp set, and I used them with a little bit of Distress Oxide ink in Vintage Photo, and just kind of stamped those randomly at the bottom just to kind of break up all that bare area. Now, I felt like my gnome was a little bit too short for the drink stand, so I decided I would put some more sand in front of that little stand. So I tore another piece of cardstock of the same brown, inked it up with some Vintage Photo Distress Oxide ink, and I will glue that along the bottom of the drink stand. It will extend out past the drink stand, and I will just prop those edges up with some foam tape when I put everything together. And just to make sure this video doesn't go on until dinner time, I have colored all my little images off camera. I did use Copic markers, and I will list those colors on my blog if you would like to know what they are. So I'm going to take my little drinks and my little desserts. You can see that I've left a little bit of area to glue them, and I'm going to place them at the bottom on the inside of that window. Okay, now I'm going to fill in this little window with all kinds of fun little things. I am using bubblegum sparkle spots. I am using some pink shaker pops, some pool sparkle spots, and some melon sparkle spots. I think they all just are perfect for this card. One of the things I really like about the shaker pops is that it adds a little bit of noise to the card, and I think that makes it just a little bit more fun. Now we can go ahead and seal up that well. I'm going to use liquid glue again, making sure to keep my glue kind of away from the edges where that acetate's going to be, because again, I don't want any of that acetate to kind of smush onto the front of that card. I'm going to add my second layer of sand to the front of my drink stand. I'm just going to put some little foam dots down by the side, and then just go ahead and glue it to the stand and to the foam dots. Once I had my gnome placed where I thought I wanted him, I had to figure out what to do with that empty space to the right of him. So I just made a little sign with the word open and hung it from the countertop. I couldn't figure out anything else to do with it. I didn't really have any stamps that were like a little sand bucket. I just didn't have anything that worked, and I didn't want to put any of the drinks in the sand, so the open sign is what I came up with. I always like to add a little bit of bling to my cards, so I used some of the sparkle spots, and I just glued them to the front of the card. Just a nice little touch. I've got a card base that I've cut at 5.5 by 8.5 and scored at 4.25. Go ahead and fold that in half and give it a good press. Now the sentiment is from the Summer Gnome Fun, which is the same set that the little gnome comes from. I'm going to go ahead and stamp that on another piece of cardstock that's been cut at 5.25 by 4, and I will go ahead and glue that on the inside of my card. One of the reasons I do that is because I always feel like the back of the cards feel kind of flimsy compared to the front, so I just think it adds a little bit of, well, it just kind of beefs it up a little bit, kind of ties everything together. And to finish up making this card, I'm going to go ahead and glue the front of my card to the front of my card base. For the final touch on this card, I'm going to take my white gel pen and I'm just going to add some little highlights to my little gnome, my little sign at the top there. I'm not doing a lot of white gel pen stuff because it's something I really struggle with. I just either go too crazy or I don't do enough. So you'll see a lot of my cards that don't even have the white gel pen on it because it's extremely intimidating to me. And that pretty much does it for this card. I just absolutely love this card. This is going to be one I may or may not give away. I just want to remind you that we have all these fun supplies, and it's really fun just to go back in and look at the other stamp sets and die sets that you've bought in the past and think of how you can go ahead and combine them with the newer things. Okay, once again, please subscribe if you like this video and want to be notified of future ones. You can follow me on Instagram at Sandy Cogdill, also on my blog, sandycogdilldesigns.com. Thank you so much for stopping by and spending a little bit of time with me today, and I hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.